Hey guys, how you doing? We are back in my garage and we're going to look at another bond tank. Another tank that you can buy for bonds. And as you can see, I've spent all my bonds. I bought the M60 and I bought the Panzer 50T for 20,000 bonds. But there are a lot of choices of tanks that you can buy. We've reviewed some of them. Let's have a look today at the next one on the list here, which is the IS-6B. The IS-6B is basically an IS-6. They added a B and they give it a black skin. Now we'll just do a quick review here in the garage, and then I'm going to show you two fantastic games. But this thing is basically one of the oldest premium tanks in the game, and it's a beautiful looking tank. I love this thing. It was one of the first premium tanks that I ever bought, and it was great. Back in its day. It was heavily armored and it had a hard-hitting gun, poor gun handling, but got very good matchmaking, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But just quickly here, what do you get with this thing? You get a gun at tier 8 on a heavy tank that has 186 penetration, which is all you need to know, which means this tank simply is not competitive anymore in this game. 186 pen on your regular round with 390 alpha, with very poor gun handling, 2.68 second aim time and 0.42 dispersion, with a rather low DPM. And this is buffed. This is better than it used to be. This has been buffed slightly. 186 pen means you will almost always be shooting premium ammunition, which I think the premium ammunition gets 225 pen, and it's APCR. I believe. What else? Survivability. You got this troll armor that's 100 on the front, 100 on the side. But look at the beautiful angles here. Like, you got to admit, this is a beautiful looking tank. The angles are just amazing, and you can still bounce a lot of shots, because it's if you're angled at all, or if they hit the wrong part of your armor, it's an auto bounce in many circumstances. So it does have troll armor for tier 8. It's fairly slow, 35 top speed. Just slow for a Russian tank, because heavy tanks are supposed to scoot around the battlefield like medium tanks, not this one. Surprisingly good concealment, almost 9% stationary without crew skills. You can get that up almost to 20. You could train your crew in concealment and add, different crew skills and food and stuff, and this becomes very stealthy if you want to snipe from the back in your IS-6 and not do any damage. But anyway, spotting, it has basically no view range, 350 base view range. So this thing is basically an IS-6. I have an IS-6. I loved my IS-6 in the past. Look, I got 2 marks of excellence on my barrel. It is a great looking tank, but this is what it's all about, is this gun, right? 186 pen for 390 damage. 186 pen at tier 8 in this meta, in a slow heavy tank, is just, it sucks. But the one thing we should mention is this tank gets what is called preferential matchmaking, which means it does not ever have to fight tier 10s. Now, the review of this tank is basically going to be a discussion of what preferential matchmaking means, because when this tank first came out, preferential matchmaking meant there was a definition of what preferential matchmaking meant. Then Wargaming went through a period where they wanted to remove preferential matchmaking from all tanks that had preferential matchmaking. And there was an outcry. People did not want to do that. They wanted to buff these preferred matchmaking tanks, give them slight buffs, and then put them in regular matchmaking. People cried foul, including me, and they said, okay, we won't do that. So what did they do instead? They changed the matchmaker. So most of these tanks that have preferential matchmaking now just suck, and I'm going to explain that in more detail as we watch the game. We're going to watch 2 games. Let's roll the clips now, and we'll keep talking about this tank. Oh, we should mention, wait, before we roll the clip, this thing will cost you, I didn't even mention that. How much, huh? How much? How much is it going to cost? Well, 8,000 bonds to get yourself an IS-6B. Is it worth 8,000 bonds? No. There's a lot of other better choices, and we're going to review them all eventually. But let's watch a couple of games in the IS-6B. We're going to watch Goldman 54 here have a great game. And in this particular game, the matchmaker has decided that there should be 3 tier 8s, 6 tier 7s, and 5 tier 6s per side. Because the matchmaker's decided that his IS-6B should have a good game this particular round. 3-6-5 matchmaking. Weird. Okay, whatever. Anyways, okay, so you got a fairly slow, heavily armored tank with a really troll, bad handling gun with low pen. But you got preferential matchmaking. That was the review on this tank, and I said it's not worth it. And it deserves a discussion of what's happened. What is this preferential matchmaking? Now, how did Wargaming kind of power creep these preferential matchmaking tanks out of competition? And I'll explain it here. Oh, you can see the gun doesn't handle very well. Russia! When RNG says yes, guys, RNG says yes. Remember, we're watching here probably one of the best games played this recent patch. Okay, let me continue the discussion. When this tank came out, it had lower pen on the regular round and poorer gun handling. Remember, this has been buffed since they made the changes to the matchmaker, and preferential matchmaking meant that you never had to fight tier 10s. And back in the day when it came out, the matchmaker was you were always, if you were top tier, you would be in a, similar to this, in an 8-7-6 game. It was 3-5-7. There would be 3 tier 8s, 5 tier 7s, and 7 tier 6s. That's who you had to fight. And your gun had something like 172 pen, but you had trolley armor, but your gun couldn't hit anything. You had to really aim like that so that you could get hit back. It was, you could dominate and you could have some great games when it was 3-5-7 and you were top tier. And that happened quite frequently, The worst that you could get with the preferential matchmaking, you would be in a tier 9 game. So there would be 3 tier 9s, 5 tier 8s, which you would be one of them, and 7 tier 7s, 3-5-7 matchmaking. So the worst you could get back in the day was, you'd be a tier 8, there'd be 3 tier 9s you'd have to worry about, and 7 tier 7s, and a bunch of other tier 8s. And a lot of the heavily armored new tier 8s with the hard-hitting guns like the Defender and the Maubraka and the Chrysler, and all, they didn't exist yet. So Wargaming went through a period there where they said, we don't like these preferential matchmaking tanks anymore. We're going to get rid of preferential matchmaking, buff them a little bit, put them into the regular matchmaker. And there was an outcry from everyone because nobody wanted that. Everyone loved their preferential matchmaking tanks because they didn't want to fight tier 10s and the tier 8 premiums. So Wargaming backed off. They said, okay, we will not do that. Well, they buffed them slightly, mainly just the base pen, to handle kind of the regular power creep that was occurring in the game. But then they did something different, like a sneaky, the little reach around nerf. They didn't change the matchmaking for the tanks. They changed the matchmaker. So now I'm showing you a game here where he's top tier with tier 7s and 6s. But this happens very, very rarely now. 1 out of 50, 1 out of 100 games. And so we're going to get to see him dominate on the battlefield. But what you get now when you have one of these, IS-6B, all the other preferential matchmaking tanks, almost every game you play is full tier 8. That's one of the options. All 15 players tier 8. You're fighting all tier 8s. Well, that's not so bad. Well, it is when you have 186 pen and the enemy team gets a defender that has 230 pen and 440 alpha and better armor because it's newer and costs more. Or the other team has a bunch of Chryslers that you can't pen, or VKs, the big badass tier 8 VK, or a hull down Patriot, or any number of tanks that didn't exist when this was designed for the game. So you get in a full tier 8 game, okay, you're going to struggle with that 186 pen. The other choice that you get a lot is 5 tier 9s and the rest 8s. You get, I'm bottom tier. The worst that can happen now is you got 5 tier 9s
and 10 tier 8s, you're one of the tier 8s. There are no tier 7s. In most of the games that you play with your IS-6B or your KV-5 or your FCM-50T, all the ones that get preferential matchmaking, you almost never see opponents that are lower tier than you anymore. So what, in a sneaky way, what used to be, the matchmaker used to be 3-5-7 all the time, and there was always, even if you were bottom tier, if you were the tier 8 in a tier 9 game, there was always some tier 7s there. If you were top tier, there were some tier 7s and 6s. Those were your choices. So you always had someone that you could handle with your poor pen. Someone you could bully. Someone you could have fun with. But now you can't have fun with anyone. Now every game you play, there will be, except this one. You know, this is very rare. This is fantastic matchmaking here. And I'd like to know if any of you guys play. I don't play my preferential matchmaking tanks consistently anymore because the matchmaker just, gets screwed all the time. Some of you that are diehard players of the IS-6B or other preferential matchmaking tanks, let us know in the comments, like, how many times do you see a tier 8, 7s, and 6s in battle these days? I would say almost never. You almost always see full tier 8s, or you almost always see tier 8s and 9s. And some of the tier 9s you have to fight now are ridiculous. Can you imagine this thing going up against any of a motion, and you pull up there with 186 pen, or a T10, or a there's a whole bunch of tanks, heavily armored tanks at tier 9 now that didn't exist in the old days. What do you do when you roll out with 186 pen in this thing? Well, this guy had a fantastic game. Not even ace tanker. Okay? 5,000 damage. Not even ace tanker. So the thing, man, it made 100,000 credits. Wow. So it must be a pretty good premium tank. Well, that I just showed you one of the best games, right? That's probably as good as it gets. The best matchmaking you can hope for. Let me know in the comments if you are a die-hard player of one of these preferential matchmaking tanks, how many times you see tier 7s and 6s. I'd be interested in reading your comments, and I'm going to show you another game here. Citron 1 has also got fantastic matchmaking. He's going to have a little bit different experience with his gun handling in this game. More indicative of the R, random number generator, that's associated with this tank. But you see, so it was a sneaky way of making these tanks obsolete. It was a sneaky. We might have been better off if we let Wargaming buff them to regular tier 8 tanks and let them be in the regular matchmaker. Who knows what kind of buffs they would have incorporated. And then got regular matchmaking, so occasionally see tier 10s and just in the regular matchmaker. Because what we got now is underwhelming tanks. There's always something underwhelming about them. In this one, the gun handling, raise the PP, yes, you missed again. And very poor pen. And then you almost always see tier 9s and 8s. Except for the 2 games I've cherry-picked to show you today. Because come on, would I show you a video and just show you 2 games where the this tank is versus tier 9s and 8s and does 0 damage and bounces 12 shots? That would be fun to watch, but I could show you lots of games like that. Oh, yeah. Shot kind of deviated there a bit. You were rocking back and forth. It's your own fault. But when you have 186 pen, guys, this tank, I played it a couple times, and look at the tanks he's shooting at. Well, you missed. You're getting trolled a little bit with RNG. You're fighting the new Russian premium tank that has better armor and 2 guns. Who can double tap you for 800. I always feel when I'm playing one of the preferential matchmaking tanks, especially this one, that you just can't help your team. Like, look at this. This is typical, okay? This is the typical game. I always feel like I'm helpless. It's like I can't do anything. What? This is the real life of the IS-6. The first game, yeah, okay. That's the one in 10,000 games. You can look it up. That's the best. The first game I showed you was the best game played on the server. Oh, RNG said yes. You low rolled, but RNG said yes. I don't know how. He's firing. Remember, he's firing nothing but premium ammo here, guys. He's pressed 2. This is going to cost him a fortune. He's pressed 2, so he's fired APCR with 220 whatever pen. And he's trying his best. Your turret can't block anything versus the better premium tanks. He's top tier here, guys. He's dominating on the battlefield as top tier. What would he be doing if he was in a tier 9 game? I know what I'd be doing. I'd be way back there at K1. So I always, if you're in a tier 9 game and you're around the corner and you see a motion, what do? You can't pen him. What do? Track him and hope your teammates shoot? Is that the strategy? Go for the tracking shot? Go spot? What? I feel like I can't do anything to help the team in this tank. And he's trying his best here. This guy knows what he's doing. Yeah, pumping another shot into there. Beautiful. He's trying his best. He's not angled very well. This guy's shooting down at his arm. He's taking someone out on the battlefield. Well done. Well done. Well done. Oops. Oh, that guy has 2 guns. I wouldn't mess with him. Oh, he's bouncing some shots. He's angled up. Oh, this guy's got 2 guns. Raise the PP and say, go buy yourself a better Russian heavy premium. One with 2 guns. Yours only has 1 gun, and your gun's not very good. He has 2 guns. And he quits in disgust. Fuck this tank, he says. So guys, my opinion, my no bullshit opinion is, it makes credits, and the 1 in 100 games where you have matchmaking like these guys, you might have a good game. As you saw, one guy did and one guy didn't. But 99, well, let's not exaggerate. 80% of the games, you're going to be versus almost all tier 8s or tier 8s and 9s, and you're going to really struggle to do damage unless you shoot nothing but premium ammo. And even with premium ammo, you have lower penetration than some of the new tier 8s. And you have less armor and less mobility. And Wargaming did not... they didn't remove preferential matchmaking. Right? They didn't remove preferential matchmaking, but they changed the matchmaker. And they introduced a lot of tier 8 tanks and tier 9 tanks that are a lot more powerful. So the result for these tanks that have preferential matchmaking is no fun for you anymore. Don't be a cheap bastard. Go buy yourself a new one. We have new, better models now. We have Russian heavy tanks that have 2 guns. Why you want to play IS-6B? You could have, special Russian tank with 2 guns, better armor, and more pen, more bang for your buck, more rubles, more wins.